out to people no later than the 15th.
Okay.
Which means we probably need to have it tightened up by the 10th, because it's going to take a couple of days to remember what we remember and get a copy out to people. So 7, 8, 9.
I know we have ITF next Thursday, but
What about the 8th? The second Wednesday is usually good for TALC, in that our meetings are the 1st and the 3rd, and ITF is the 1st, and first Thursday.
yeah, we have labor management at 2 that day, so that might work.
Yeah. Heather says yes, so we can do it. Yeah, the 8th.
The 8th, yes.
4 o'clock
Thursday.
until we're done, possibly the next morning, pretty
I mean,
much.
Wednesday. It's Wednesday, May 8th. Is that gonna work for most people?
Yes, I think. Looking at my team. May 8th.
Wednesday, May 8th. I know schools are really busy at this time of year, so. I just heard Kerr say maybe we'll get done on the 6th, and then we can cancel the 8th. That would work too.
That has never been our pattern. You schedule a date, we seem to use it.
Okay, Wednesday, May 8th, good? All right, but that's the last available date we can do, correct?
With the caveat, and
Yeah.
Amy is sitting over there, so she can remind me tomorrow, or she can help me out with the room, okay? We're not against displacing someone, but we just need to make sure that
Give
can
them a
happen.
little notice.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. With that, do we have sound? Is anybody?
We do.
Okay, good. Thanks, Amy. All right, so let's look at the agenda. We were wrapping up something last Thursday, and hope we could get it done today.
Kurt reminded me today that there's a couple of Article 7 items. A couple of them dealing with virtual options, so I'll let them go ahead.
Okay, Kurt?
Makes you want to.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, we had, I gave you 3, there was, I was just reminded by my team, we have one more small outstanding thing. But if we could go to notice, or virtual option, we talked a little bit about having a virtual option for mandatory PD or meetings. Mandatory PD or meetings. It morphed into PD or meetings outside of contract hours or off-site.
What's the one that's down here?
Yeah, the leading and learning is one of the big ones. Folks wanting to have a virtual option for that, so that because it's very inconvenient to get down here for some places. And so we have 2 options that are there. One is the virtual option for mandatory PD or meetings held outside of contract hours or away from the work site. And the other is for a virtual option for LVS teachers specifically. They are virtual by nature, and we wanted to codify their right to have, or their ability to have meetings virtually. I'm sorry? Yeah, if you'd like to. So I guess those are options 1 and 2 for tonight.
Virtual option for LVS staff. Instructional staff assigned to lead virtual schools will be provided a virtual option for any mandatory professional development or meetings in order to optimize participation and effectiveness. And the other virtual option states, instructional staff will be provided a virtual option for any mandatory professional development or meetings held outside of contract hours of, away from the work site in order to
Should say or away.
okay. Or away from the work site in order to optimize participation and effectiveness.
Okay, Rob, I saw the mic in your hand. Yes.
These are in the March 25th meeting minutes, if anybody wants to look at what Mark just read. Regarding the virtual option for mandatory PD, after hours or whatever that says, Dr. Martin we have survey data, which is, I think, very relevant for this. So I'm gonna pass the microphone over to her so she can add that to story.
Each year in professional development, we do a needs assessment, a professional learning needs assessment of teachers. And one of the questions we always ask is, what is your preferred format for professional learning? So the number one at 47% of respondents was face-to-face format for professional learning. The second piece was online at my own pace. The third piece was a combination of face-to-face and online at my own pace. And on the very last was Teams at 17% as the preferred format for professional learning options. So that's one piece. It's a little different from some of the feedback that I'm hearing from teachers about how they want professional learning experienced to be for them. And then also, I want to talk about the word mandatory. So mandatory learning for us in the professional learning world are those annual suite of required trainings that all employees that are required to complete, and those are done all virtually online at their own pace. And then professional learning, I'm looking maybe for a couple of examples of what you're talking about, some of the other mandatory PDs that are happening after hours or outside of their workplace, because as you know, you are required to model strategies sometimes in professional learning, and that doesn't always translate if you're doing it virtually and you're modeling a strategy that educators would use for instruction in the classroom. It's very difficult to accomplish in a virtual setting, and the feedback from the teachers is they really want to see it live and in person modeled for them.
Okay, Shannon? Yep.
I know in the curriculum and instruction team with leading and learning, there may be some options where they're meeting by zones in the future because of that we are such a large district and some people do have a far distance to travel to come to the district office. For example, the science leading and learning, math leading and learning, a lot of those trainings are hands-on, and so they feel it's important to meet face-to-face for those trainings. But we are hearing the travel distance is becoming a barrier. And so they are discussing ways to kind of mitigate that. But no decisions have been made yet, but we are discussing that.
Okay, thank you for the update. Kevin?
I think specifically for the leading and learning, and thanks for reminding me to do my required training, by the way, don't look. Specifically the leading and learning. I think that was the largest pain point. And I'm going to be honest with you, we've heard from administrators. I mean, for me, the leading and learning, they can't get people to do it. People at small schools, and then we need to have this discussion offline around the idea of supplements. People are forced to do it, forced to possibly do more than one. If you have to come down here and you're living or working on the Cape, you're missing time with your students. And that's providing a coverage problem. So, I mean, I'm happy to know we're moving towards zones, and maybe zones is a happy compromise on this for now until we get some data around that. But people are still being forced. Yeah. Yeah, so again, if we, again, I don't want to say, well, we're thinking about developing zone meetings, so, we haven't made any decision yet, so, I would feel much better if there was a commitment to do zone meetings. I think it's either the nurses or the social workers are doing their meetings next week. They had one down here. I think it's next week, one of them are doing by zone, so one is Success, one is Eastleigh, and one is, I think, in South Fort Myers, and that seems to cut the travel time and cut the time people have to be away from work and cut the coverage, I think. But I think there's a larger discussion here around the idea that people, I think part of the reason people don't want them is, and I'm just going to say this from my own perspective about things I want or don't want, reasons why people don't want them is they don't see the value. And so I'm not sure how we accommodate that as well, because I always go back to, places like Starbucks that charge $10 for a coffee that costs $1.50, and they have no problem selling. So people want them and see value in that. And so maybe if we made the travel less demanding and had zone meetings that way, it might make it less demanding, but also the idea that no one should be forced to do it as well. So we'll wait.
Carl?
You know, I heard mentioned earlier, and one of the things I would want to be cautious of is that even though the delivery of instruction by virtual teachers may be virtual or online, the training needs to be, I believe, we need to consider making it consistent, because what we don't want is the brick and mortar teachers to feel like I'm actually asked to do more than what the virtual teachers are asked to do when it comes to receiving training. So I think I would want us to be cautious about, because this is your instructional delivery, now your instructional receiving has to be the same, especially when sometimes it wouldn't necessarily translate, in an appropriate manner. So I would want us to be cautious about stepping into that arena, because if I'm a brick and mortar teacher and I'm doing that, why can't I have that option just because I made the choice to do face-to-face instruction? So.
Kevin?
I was just getting a little reminder from Kurt. So some of the LVS model is they are allowed to meet virtually, except for if you're a certain teacher, a certain kind of teacher. So like, even though it's a virtual option, the testing coordinator has to come in. So it's like even the virtual teachers at the virtual school are having virtual meetings, except for certain people at the virtual school who are required to come in for the meeting, their colleagues who are all virtual or attending virtual. So I think, and again, the professional development is something we can see the value of being face-to-face in the data. So that's not necessarily the hill, but I think the idea that meetings, and again, willing to test the idea if we have a commitment to zone meetings for a year and see if we have fewer kind of issues, right? If we go zone and then all of a sudden people stop complaining and it's all cool, zone was the answer, right? If we go to zone and we still have the same issues, then I think we need to bring it back again. So like we've done with the early release days that are happening now, we're slowly but surely getting to a point where we know what's supposed to happen. It seems to be working out well and it seems to be okay. So again, the idea, it would have to take a commitment that we are going to do them via zone, and we'll see where that leads us in a year, maybe by doing a survey of the people that come to them about whether the zone was better than the, hey, everybody come down here.
Rob?
Yeah, so those with sequential chronological minds are probably like I am. Well, because Carl somehow jumped to the LVS issue, and we were trying to talk about the first issue.
Right, the virtual.
Yeah, for everybody,
trainings.
virtual
Right.
trainings for everybody. So, I don't know what I'm hearing, but I know you have an option up there, but that issue, are you pulling, I don't know, are you pulling the issue? Are you want to discuss it next year? I mean,
We have another
I know
option.
Kevin said something about the zone concept, but I certainly heard Dr. Johnston loud and clear that there's been no determination made regarding that. So I can't commit to something that when there hasn't been a determination made. So I'm not sure where we're at.
Kurt?
As Kevin said, it's really meetings more than really PD or anything like that. We're trying to capture everything that happened using this language. I mean, is there appetite for a virtual option just for meetings that happen off of the work site? The leading and learning would be great. I'm not trying to beat the dead horse here, but it's those types of things that are really the pain point for our members. And similarly with LVS, I would be happy to amend the option to strike the words mandatory professional development and just
Professional learning curve.
and just having the option for a virtual option for meetings, specifically their staff meetings, because sometimes a meeting can be called within 24-hour notice, and that's really hard when you have to worry about childcare and other things when you're not at a brick and mortar.
Okay, Yes, Helen?
I think an important piece as part of the story is the state's recently come out with a definition of professional learning as an activity that is ongoing, continuous, collaborative, and provides models. So again, that's difficult to do in an all virtual environment. You often need a little bit of both in order to accomplish that. But then also they put limitations. They define meetings as really like routine informational meetings, that those are not professional learning and therefore not eligible for in-service points. So I just want to add that piece to the story, that if it feels a little less like that professional learning definition and a little more like routine informational, then it's not eligible for in-service points.
Okay, Kevin?
And I guess, and again, not to go back to like one specific type of meeting, but the real pain point was the leading and learning. That was the real pain point. And so I'm happily aware that you can't commit right now to decide whether or not that's happening kind of in a zone format next year. We have a couple more meetings. Is it possible? I mean, because again, we're talking about August, right? And so is it possible that you can take it back to whomever you need to take it back to, and they could maybe have a decision with the idea that, you know, the teams have spoken loud and clear in bargaining. We need to do something with this particular type of meeting for people?
Yeah, and we would also, and I'm not sure what the curriculum directors have done and what survey information they have on the leading and learning participants, but we would also, if they don't have any data, we would like to get some information from the participants as well before we make a decision. But I definitely need to take this back to the curriculum directors. Yeah.
Okay, so, Anna?
I just wanted to add to the story. I know Kevin had mentioned a little bit about the smaller schools. When you are in a smaller school where there's 3 people on the team, that leaves one person going to math, one person going to reading, one person going to science. So you don't have a choice on whether or not you are doing leading and learning. It's more so, which one do you want to do? And I know some of the smaller schools, even smaller than my school, if you are, you know, the 4th grade teacher, are you automatically on all 3 of them? I know that's kind of discussions we've had. So just kind of as we bring back information, that I know there's not a lot of smaller schools out there, but we do have those school sites that have those smaller teams where it becomes, you know, it's a commitment that you have to participate in.
All right, Kevin, you're gonna add something? Or Kurt? Which one? Okay. Okay,
Without trying to conflate the 2 items, I'd like to edit my LVS option if that's okay. Okay, fine, then we'll table the virtual option part and edit the LVS one, and maybe we can knock the other one out after the curriculum team meets.
okay,
And Donna, for the LVS option, I'd like to strike the words any.
hold on a sec. You want that up there?
Yeah, so,
Strike the word any in the first line, and then professional development or in the second one, the top.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So in the virtual option,
Yep, it would read, instructional staff assigned to LVS will be provided a virtual option for, strike the word any, mandatory meetings, strike the word PD or. What's that development? Sorry, Helen.
strike the word PD.
Or, yes.
Okay.
So it would say, will be provided a virtual option for mandatory meetings in order to optimize participation and effectiveness.
Okay. And we wish to table the other one until we get more information from Shannon. Okay, Rob?
So you're talking mandatory faculty meetings? Is that essentially what you're talking about? Okay. And someone could possibly elucidate the point. I was trying to find a different word. Someone can, what are they doing currently? I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily privy to it.
As Kevin said, it's my understanding that some of the folks are allowed to participate in these meetings virtually, some aren't. It seems to be a job code issue, or a job description issue, where the words remote work or whatever are missing from job codes. But it just really speaks to the fact that they're all over the place. And oftentimes it's hard to move mountains and rearrange your life to, to go to a meeting the next day.
Donna, I'm just gonna go.
Go ahead.
So those folks whose job code requires them to be here have to come to this building? Is that what's happening? Okay.
That's my understanding, yes.
All right. Anything else from anybody? Ross?
So I would just like, I'd like to be able to look into that. So if we could just table this one also, so I can talk to that principal to find out if that's in fact accurate. That I just ask your indulgence to do that.
That's fine, that probably means we don't have the caucus too, right? We don't have the caucus though.
Okay. So, everybody okay with tabling both these items? Do you need a date certain or just table till more information can be brought back? Next time we meet. Okay. Next time we meet, Rob said, okay?
With the caveat that Shanna's issue,
Right,
I'm not sure where that conversation's at. Okay.
right. But your part, I'm talking to the principal, you'll bring that back. Okay. All right, then we will leave these two items for now. And the next thing on the agenda is, did we have anything else to clean up from last Thursday? I don't remember.
There's one other notice issue.
Okay.
It's on that page as well.
That's why I have to check with Jennifer. I have to check with the principal.
It's my understanding it's just school, a school meeting, not like, faculty meeting, not a department specific or job specific.
Okay, what was the other issue?
Notice for meetings, it's on that page too. It's the,
Okay,
I think this was on the same night, the 25th. This option speaks to notice for mandatory meetings being given at the beginning of each semester.
okay. Again, this one is in the March 25th minutes, right?
Yes.
Anna? Oh, sorry.
So just to provide some story, when we look at, and I'm looking at page 33 of the work schedule, for the mandatory meetings. So this just goes to scheduling of administratively mandated meetings, which are limited to 2 per month. We're just asking for a timeline of that would be on the, same thing through the school calendar committee, that's in Article 13, I believe that is, that they would have those put out on the calendar in advance. Doesn't take away the right to hold a emergency meeting, doesn't take away the right to have that, like if the department needs to meet over something, just that administratively mandated 2 per month meeting that's already in the contract, adding a timeline for that.
Thank you. Rob?
The point I wanted to make was the point that Anna made about the principals would still have the right to call an emergency meeting
Okay.
in that option.
Kevin?
As I have said before, I never get in the way of that. I just like to count how many emergencies people have sometimes. We can talk about the school that for the past 4 times we visited has had a random fire drill every time we've been on campus to recruit members. What are the odds?
All right, so the option that's up here, is that the option we want to go with, or does this need to be edited, or does somebody else have another option? I don't see.
Because I've always.
Would you read it, please, Mark?
For some reason, I'm just
Honestly, I don't think it's different than what you do now. It's just codifying it, so to speak.
Yeah, let's stop it. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mark, read it.
Notice for meetings. Notice for school-based mandatory meetings shall be given at the beginning of each semester on the school calendar developed by the school calendar committee. Teachers are not required to attend meetings and similar functions not expressly stated on the school calendar. An emergency meeting may be called at the discretion of the principal.
Okay? All right, Jill.
And I just want to provide for a story. One of the things that we have gotten some communication on more recently is like schools scheduling testing meetings, mandatory meetings about proctoring tests, giving the teachers 1 week notice and saying it's mandatory for the next week, the day before the test. And so that's something else that when we look at this, that was a concern for us. We know when testing is, we know when this teachers are going to test, making sure that any required meetings for testing that we have to be attending for any type of training or updates on testing, those are the types of meeting too, when we think mandatory, that should be on that calendar.
Okay. Carl, did you?
Yeah, I think the emergency.
The emergency piece will cover that, because to be honest with you, I know as principals, we don't like when there's been a change from the state and those meetings get called and the testing coordinator is told because something's come from the state. But I think with the emergency piece that's put in, but honestly, it's something I hate counting that as one of my ones because it's sometimes there are things that, as we know, the way the state testing format has been, there'll be something that's brought to our attention that has to be addressed. I'm like, what, another one? Because we used to only have to have like one, seems like the entire year. Now, even though testing is supposed to be reduced, it seems like every time you turn around, we have to have an emergency meeting. So we can get this anyway. So trust me, we're not sitting there saying, I can't wait to have that next testing meeting. Yeah, Shay, you know what I'm talking about, Shay.
As many as she can possibly get.
Yeah, so it's, sounds fine to me.
Okay. All right, yes, I get it. Okay, anything else on this option? Rob?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through an option here. So I think I get the gist of what TALC's saying and have no inherent objection to it. I think by Jill bringing that up, that makes me think there could be things that happen that aren't, quote, emergencies necessarily, but they're also not on that calendar. So I would like to possibly add some language that says, not add, just put it separately, but we'll figure out where it can go, that all efforts will be made to provide advance notice of unscheduled meetings or something like that. I just, calling everything an emergency, Kevin brings up the silliness in doing that.
Right.
But I also think just giving the principal discretion for an emergency meeting seems awfully dramatic. I think there should be somewhere in the middle. I guess that's where I'm trying to get.
Okay. So all effort,
All efforts may be given for advance notice on
Will be made to provide advance notice of unscheduled meetings.
to provide. Or unscheduled.
For unscheduled.
Right. Kevin?
And again, I'm not inherently against this kind of language that exists but doesn't exist as part of the option, or maybe not part of the option. I just think, like, sometimes we find out about meetings that have to be called for testing, and we find out one place is doing it the day before the test, and one place has already done it. Now, I'm gonna make the assumption, and I'm gonna look at Shay, because she's my testing coordinator, that you guys are probably, when you need to have a meeting, you're all probably told around the same time, right? They don't just tell you, hey, you need to have a meeting, so you have it in a timely fashion, and the other testing coordinators get told 48 hours before the test, and they have to do it, within 48 hours. So again, I think you're right. The state changes their mind all the time, and that's not anybody's fault but the state's, and there is more testing than ever before, even though there's not supposed to be. So again, I think this comes down to me, especially around this idea of planning. Like, if you were told, there were some places that were told they needed to have a meeting, they were able to pull it off in a timely fashion. There were some places that were told they had to have a meeting and waited until the day before the test. There was one guy I talked to who was told to give a test when he hadn't had any training. And I said, oh, please don't do that. And so so we're kind of having this kind of mess. And really this option is about, let's act like we can plan a little bit, but understand there's some flexibility when the state says something needs to happen. Kurt says we should probably caucus unless there's another story. And Dr. Amy, did you get the email I sent you? About, not to put you on the spot.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. It was about the coaching stuff. Remember I told you about the coaching stuff?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all right.
Yes, I will pick it up.
Okay, cool. No worries. This is the first time I saw you.
Time frame?
Shay wants to say something.
Okay.
So some of the things that come up with testing, and it does come, we have DOE directed by some things. I think one of the concerns that was brought up about a month or so ago was we were given directives for best writing. We had to do a training. All of our trainings actually get uploaded to the DOE. So we have to go back and look at attendance manager, we have to make sure everyone's been trained, they have to have their signed forms. And that's really super important now that we're doing investigations school-based. So an investigation can take almost up to an entire day, I know because I just had to do one for our FSA writing. Once we did our best writing, I communicated with my principal right away, hey, we have to do this, when can I do it? We switched out a faculty meeting and she let me do it. Another school sent an email 3 days before they needed to train, telling them they all had to work late that day to attend a training for writing. Happened to be the day before the test, so that's kind of difficult because you're not going to get everybody the day before the test. And then they were told they could use like flex time. So a lot of teachers were a little up in arms about that, like, well, I think they were told they could leave early 2 days, like when the kids left, which honestly in a high school doesn't happen because all of us have duties. Well, the schools I work with have duties. So I don't know a way to codify that because those trainings are important. We have people sitting in professional standards because of testing right now, and a lot of times those are those people that aren't trained properly. So I'm not sure where to go with that, but the team down here, Kim and Aaron, do a great job of communicating with the coordinators. I think the coordinators need to make sure that they're really communicating with their admin staff to make sure those meetings are happening.
Okay. All right, Carl wants to have a word now.
Yeah, Shay, I'm glad you said that because I'm wondering if some of the breakdowns come from the coordinator not letting the principal know. Because I know that when it comes to me, I know I have to do it, but typically I usually have. I was just surprised recently, so it may be the coordinator, and so as principals, we need to make sure that we're getting the information in a timely fashion. But I also want to be, that's a slippery slope because I'm not trying to. Ultimately, it's my responsibility as principal to know. But then if I'm not notified in a timely manner. And I'm not saying that's happened because we haven't had that get to that point, but I just know it seems like there's just, am I mistaken that, or am I right that there seems to be more training this year than what we've normally had? Okay, I just, because that's the way it seems to me, because I just remember I'm old, so it was like we had one big training like, and it covered the rest, the entire year. This year, it seems like there's been intermittent trainings, and so that could, so there could be a conglomerate of things that are causing the angst. Because I know it brings me some anxiety, and then I cancel other meetings to make sure I don't go. I don't like to do them a lot. Any type of meeting.
So before each big testing now, we are required by DOE to do a training. We also had additional training on WIDA this year because we were field test sites. All of the K through 12 sites did the field test in addition to the WIDA test. DOE is really looking at our trainings. I mean, because they go top down now when they start their investigation. So if a person wasn't trained right there, that falls to the testing coordinator and then the admin. If the person was trained, we have to upload all of our trainings too. Our trainings have to be school specific, but there have been more this year, especially with the introduction of best writing also.
Okay, Rob?
We're gonna caucus also.
Okay. 10 minutes? 10 minutes good for you guys?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Kurt, you ready for the caucus report?
Sure thing. We discussed the option and kind of all the testing stuff that has gone along with it. Was reminded to a plug that I made a few months ago as we're looking at it's the elementary and middle testing coordinators really need to be full-time positions. We were talking about just the untenable workload and things of that nature. But as it comes to the calendar, it's really just more around a professional courtesy to give advance notice around the meetings. I don't think we discussed anything more than that.
Okay. Mark, finish. Okay, Rob?
So we had a similar conversation, and much like we did with the topic of faculty meetings when we met last Thursday, we were talking about limiting them to a certain duration. We're gonna come back from our caucus and put an option up of status quo.
Okay. So, I'm trying to figure out where our other options are. We have options up there, right?
Yes.
And was that, all effort will be made, was that part an option or no?
Yeah, it was.
Because you said it wasn't and then you kind of said it. Okay, so we have
This would be option
3. Yeah, you can put it there because there's no room on that other paper. Option 3.
Status quo.
Yep. All right, so with that, we have 3 options currently. We have the option from March 25th. We have the option for district all efforts will be made to provide advance notice for unscheduled meetings. And then we have status quo. Anybody want to make a straw design or test one of these options, or do you have?
Donna, I just want to clarify, the status quo is to the language in 7.01, 1E.
01. Yep. Parentheses. E.
Which is on page 33.
Okay, I'll give you a second just to look that over quickly. All right. Any other options? Any other straw design? Any option you want to test? Kerr.
In an effort for some compromise here, what if we did a straw design of options 1 and 2?
Straw design, and then put option 1 and 2. Options 1 and 2.
Donna, what's number 2, option 2?
Number 2 is all effort will be made to provide advance notice for unscheduled meetings. Yep.
1 is ours.
1 is the one that was from March 25th. Any further, Rob?
So the reason I don't believe we need language regarding option 1 is on page 82, the school calendar committee language defines what the role of the school calendar committee is. And it states prior to the beginning of each semester, the school calendar committee will develop a school calendar that includes anticipated dates and time for faculty meetings and school-related events. So I believe that the language in 1 is redundant for that purposes. We also have language in E, which already talks about only 2 per month, administratively mandated meetings. So I think we're just repeating language in other ways by having this option, I'm sorry.
Okay. Kerr.
So then, if that's the case, and a meeting's called and a teacher doesn't show up, are they subject to discipline? Because that was really part of our option was the line that says folks aren't required to attend that are not expressly stated on the calendar. Giving teeth to that so that if it's not there, the expectation is they don't have to show up.
If it's not one of the 2 per month, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I suspect there's an argument that the person wasn't mandated to be there. An argument. I'm not saying that prevails. I don't know what would have gone on before that, and a lot of different things, obviously. Even if you had the language, it's fact specific.
Kerr. All right, Kevin.
So I guess my question is a meeting to cover the changes in testing an administratively mandated meeting? And if so, then that's one of the 2.
Well, I know there are principals that schedule one mandatory meeting a month and then have the ability to call a second meeting. So, which complies with the contract. So testing, I'm assuming the testing coordinators can call those meetings also. I'm assuming, I don't know how that works with your print, depends who you work for probably. But, I mean, a testing coordinator has to do their job, which is to get people ready to proctor exams. So, the funny thing is, and this is an aside, I'm not sure who we're protecting here, because it's better off the person goes to the training and gets trained to test so they don't get sanctioned by the state or the district, frankly.
Yeah, and I don't think a testing coordinator can call a meeting that has any teeth, because a testing coordinator is not an administrator. We often have this kind of pseudo-administrative position, right? And so I don't think a testing coordinator has the authority to call a meeting that is required. Again, and I've dealt with an administrator who did 2 meetings a month, and the way he did it was, one of them was a whole faculty meeting, and the other one was a grade level meeting. So nobody was required to meet. So if you're a 3rd grade teacher, you do the whole one, and then you do the 3rd grade. If you're the 2nd grade, you do the whole one in the 2nd grade. So he was getting kind of 2 for 1 on it. He was getting his whole group meeting and his grade levels meetings, and not breaking the requirement as well. I think for a long time, we've had this idea that in some cases, poor planning has the ability to rob teachers of their time outside the contract. And I think we need to, in those instances, kind of look at where we can go. And the problem is, barring language, there's nothing we can hang on to. And so again, it's almost that idea that if you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. And I know I hate saying that because that's always the worst thing to say. But again, I think we've seen enough examples anecdotally in our side of the table to where it really is one of those situations where it's really the calendar committee isn't meeting, or the calendar committee is meeting as the leadership team, but they're not calling it the calendar committee, or they're meeting once a month to make adjustments, and so I think, again, the idea that there's something here that we can grieve if there's an issue at a school, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily preclude people who are already doing what they're supposed to do from changing what they do.
Rob?
Yeah, so the last part there, I mean, the current language in E is attempting to prevent grievances by having these discussed at labor management. So the parties have seen fit in the past to have collaborative language that says the TALC Labor Management Committee shall review situations where the number of meetings is of concern. So I think that's been historically how we've resolved these things, and then the school calendar committee does have a duty to meet regularly. And if that's not happening, then I think that's also something that could be addressed in labor management or by filing a grievance, frankly. I'm not here to add language to the contract when I think it's already addressed in the contract.
Okay. Jill?
I think perhaps the disconnect here is our goal is to make sure that as much notice is given about any meeting that could happen. Some schools have 2 meetings a month. And so if there's an emergency testing meeting or updates come, the testing coordinator goes and tells the principal, I got updates, I gotta go over them. And that principal might say, okay, look at their schedule or what they have on that agenda for that faculty meeting and say, I got these 2 things that I need to tell the staff, it's imperative, I'll be quick, and then you have the rest. There are schools where they will not hand over that faculty meeting and then the teachers have to have another meeting scheduled or they're stuck staying later. When I made my comments, my point was ensuring that the testing coordinator is included in that calendar so that they can say, if they know about meetings or they anticipate a need, you can schedule a tentative meeting. But here's the thing, when we don't make some of these updates, then meetings could be called, like we've said, at the last minute. And I understand that maybe we don't see this as a big deal, but it's getting to be a bigger deal. It is our job. What is unique about being a teacher, and all the teachers on that side of the table know what I'm talking about. We are in a classroom. We can't leave. If there's an emergency, I can't walk out of my room. I have to call my principal secretary and tell her I have a personal emergency and I have to stay with my students until someone can get there. And then I have to figure out what's going to happen for the rest of the day. We are in that classroom. And when things get scheduled at last minutes, that affects people's ability to pick up their kids. And some people do not have extra money for childcare. They have to get their kids. A lot of our people work part-time jobs. This is why we really need to start thinking about doing our best to schedule things in advance and giving people as much notice as possible. And then an administrator may be compromising with their testing coordinator and cutting out parts of their faculty meeting to ensure that information is given to their staff. I know that we keep saying, I don't get what the disconnect is, but I'm sure there were times that you had to leave work to get your kid. I'm sure that there were times that you had to balance and juggle things. Our people are doing that all the time. And it's, again, we don't make enough to survive in many cases. They gotta go to that second job. They can't afford these things. Like, we have to really put ourselves in the life of a public school teacher and start to think about what that's like. Because I constantly feel like we have these conversations and it's like we don't realize what the struggle is that our people are carrying year after year, and it's getting harder and harder and harder. And I feel like we constantly have to explain why these are issues. And I know the people who have been in classrooms on that side of the table understand where we're coming from.
Anybody else? Okay, we still have 3 options up here and 1 straw sign.
Can we take 5 and maybe meet in the hallway and as you discuss?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. please? You're welcome. You weren't the only one. I know, I get it. There was all sorts of little conversations dealing with other things, I'm sure, getting problem solved.
The discussion back here is, we've heard from 2 schools that have mandatory professional development on Wednesday, which is not what Wednesday afternoon is for. So at this point, I mean, you know my rant about this early dismissal day. And so I'm gonna ask that administrators cancel their professional development. We'll be grieving the 2 schools I heard about. I do, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to share.
Do you share after?
Yes.
All right. Okay, caucus report. Per?
Yeah, okay. So our caucus report is centered around the language and just kind of the other duties as assigned. We're reminded of all the time that teachers are, giving up personal time, outside of their contract hours for a whole host of things. And just trying to constrain, some of that extra time. I think we may have a small fix to kind of throw out there on option 4, I think, if I'm on the right one, but
Okay,
that's about it for right now. Or do you
Okay.
want the option now or after caucus report?
well, let Rob give his
Okay.
caucus report. Rob?
So we had a similar conversation because we don't know where, we talked last session a lot about events after school hours. Somehow, this has now morphed itself into after hours, especially Jill's comments before we went to caucus.
Okay,
And most faculty meetings, if I'm not correct, sometimes in the afternoon, I know they go past contract hours, but most faculty meetings happen during contract hours. So I'm not sure how we ended up this turning into about after hours meetings, because the original option was about notice for administrative meetings.
okay,
So we talked about that.
okay,
And then we also have an additional option
okay,
that we will share after TALC shares theirs.
okay. Option 4, Kerr.
I would like to, in 7.01, oh man, hang on.
E,
Yeah, E, thank you.
you're welcome.
The comma was after the word month, correct, Shay?
Yes.
So in line 23, after the word month, we'd like to add the comma there and add the phrase pursuant to Article 13.04 parentheses 2.
Pursuant to-
13.04 parentheses 2. That's okay.
04, parentheses 2.
That's just a reference to the instruction, or the school calendar committee, excuse me.
Okay. And Rob, your option?
So, which is now 5, I believe, right?
Right, correct.
So it's similar to option 2, but it's reworded a little bit. So every effort will be made including consultation with the TALC rep
Right.
and calendar committee comma, to provide advance notice of unscheduled meetings, period.
Okay. All right, so now we've had 2 options added. Anybody have any questions or clarification about either option? Kerr?
Can you read option 5, please, in its entirety?
Every effort will be made, including consultation with the TALC rep and calendar committee, to provide advance notice of unscheduled meetings.
Anna?
So my question is, for example, I know we keep bringing up like testing, training meetings. So with that testing coordinator now, how would that be one more stop? One more stop that now they have to, in order to schedule this meeting, they have to pull together the calendar committee to meet. They also need to get the lead building rep should be a part of the calendar committee. So in order for them to schedule this meeting, they now need to go to the calendar committee in order to schedule this. Like, for example, I got a notification on Friday that we have a testing training meeting on Tuesday within our contract hours. Would this be another stop for them?
Rob?
I don't know if stop is too strong a word. What I would envision from what the principals have told me on our team is that I would talk to the 2 teachers that are on the calendar committee and the AP usually, because there's only 4 people required, and the building rep, and say, hey, I need to schedule a meeting, giving you a heads up. Are you okay with that? Although this language does not require a thumb up or thumbs down, it says consultation. And that's how that would work. So I don't think a formal meeting needs to be called to discuss the need to have a meeting. I think it's a consultation.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Anybody else? Kevin?
Is this outside of the 2 purple?
Yes, because they would be unscheduled.
Any other questions or clarifications needed on either new option? All right, we now have 5 options. 5 is similar to 2, but not quite exactly the same. So do we have another straw design?
Question
Yeah.
for TALC. So does option 4 stand alone? I know that's a weird question.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
I'm just asking like where that would be theoretically placed in the contract.
It would be line 23 on page 33, thank you. So it'd just be after that, the word shall be limited to 2 per month, comma, pursuant to Article 13042. Just referencing the school calendar committee there. Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Anna?
So just to provide a little bit of clarification on how we got to that, Listening to some of the points that Rob had made a little bit earlier about it being kind of this language here covered this part of it, this language in Article 7 covered this part of it. It really was just putting that reference back to the work of the committee. So that way, if someone was reading through that language with that mandatory meetings, it was understood those meetings were also then part of that calendar committee where it does state they would be put on calendar prior to the semester. Just because there's a disconnect sometimes. So kind of just connecting that language together was all we were doing.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
Yeah, so we would test 4.
Okay, so just 4? So we have Star Design A, options 1 and 2, Star Design B, option 4, and we have a test called for 4. So, sure, go ahead.
7.01, I guess Article B, line 23, after the word month, add a comma pursuant to 13.04. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's fine.
Video.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we're in.
all right, let's see thumbs for option 4. We got it, option 4. All right, let us clear some of this paper out of here. Yes. Yes. Go ahead. If you, do you need to look? All right, Amy, go for it.
Hello, I'm Amy Johnson. I am doing well. I have no time constraints now that I'm here, no elephants, and I'm sure missing has already been noted. What are the things? Make progress. Oh, I work at Mirror Middle School.
That's all right, you don't always have to say that. And I don't think Amy checked in either. She came in a little late as well. Both Amy's.
I'll be affectionately known as the other Amy. I'm doing just fine. No time constraints besides coming in late. My apologies, and my expectations are that we make progress.
Thank you. And that almost gave us time to get paper done. So the next thing on the agenda,
I got one more thing on Article 7.
yeah, I know. I was just gonna say that. Oh, go ahead.
One last thing for Article 7, I swear this is the last thing.
Yeah, that's what I've heard before.
Yeah?
No, go ahead.
You didn't hear me swear as the last time. So we were looking back at our snapshots, and my team reminded me of this. I'm on page 36 in Article 7.03, specifically looking at the calendar for the Department of Juvenile Justice. And this is a story and an option because I'm hoping this is very quick. The last couple of years, we haven't been the best at doing a calendar committee for DJJ. And this year, Mr. Dodig and our rep at the site, administration, the rep worked really well together and hammered that calendar out. And the only things that
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I know this isn't your job, and Charlotte, I'm not singling you out, but it's distracting as heck with the audience walking around. I mean, I just can't.
Okay.
Sorry. No, it's not just you. It's not just you.
Go ahead.
DJJ Calendar Committee, and just wanted to enshrine that those folks also get the days that are immediately above this provision. Preschool days, professional duty days, and in-service days. And so, I mean, the story and the option would be to insert in line 29 the words preschool days, professional duty days, and in-service days.
Yes.
Yeah, the provision speaks to their 240 instructional day calendar. but doesn't speak to those days.
Rob?
Just so our team knows, we did develop the DJJ calendar, to be going to the board shortly for next year, and it includes those things. So this is just codifying that.
Oh, okay, thank you, Rob. So, this is also the option. So it would be option 1. Yes. Margaret?
TJJ Calendar Committee, insert line 29, preschool days, in-service days, and professional duty days.
Yep.
I'm sorry. TJJ Calendar Committee, insert in line 29, preschool days, in-service days, and professional duty days.
So does that mean we say, developed by DJJ administrators and teachers to ensure the required 240-day instructional calendar, including professional.
Yes.
Yes.
Blah, 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 and the recommendations shall be forwarded, is that what that means? Okay.
I guess it'd be lines 29 and 30. It would spill over. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I believe in the past when the calendar was not, when we had struggles with developing the calendar, I believe these days were not on there, and the reason they were not on there is because they were not, said they had to be on there, because, you know, DJJ's got its own little card on here, so. And our teachers in DJJ deserve professional learning too. Do we want to go through the whole contract to replace development with learning? Okay. Because it's called professional learning now. The state has redefined it. It's called professional learning.
When did we go to the time? Just like the state school counselor for the
Okay. So do we have any other options on this, or do we want to test this option? All right, can we test this option for DJJ calendar? All right, done.
Article 7 is done.
You sure?
I'm sure.
All right. You guys are sure, Article 7's done, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the next thing on the agenda was Article 10, class coverage. And I believe TALC is the one who wanted to discuss this evening. All right, Kevin?
So I think for me, I mean, outside of the financial implications of coverage, because again, I'm on the record as saying I really wish nobody would ever have to cover, ever. We had 100% staff, you know what I mean? We had enough counselors, we had enough psychologists, we have enough second grade teachers, like, the goal is no coverage. But I think outside of the compensation piece attached to it, which this conversation isn't really about, I think it's about looking at, and I'll call it guardrail language, that existed kind of in the ESSER coverage, to re-establishing some of that guardrail coverage, and also talking about members of the special instructional staff when they have to, when a psychologist has to cover another school. The nurses have it, I think, pretty well worked out. And again, I know we're short in those areas too. So I think a lot of this, aside from compensation, revolved around the idea to reestablish that guardrail language. And I don't know if we have any copy, and not that the guardrail language is an option, but it's certainly something that maybe somebody should throw up on the screen so we can all be reminded of kind of what was there.
Okay.
But of course, I can't do it and I don't have it, so just like a president, make it happen and walk away.
And who has it, Rob? No. All right, go ahead, Rob.
I can retrieve it. No, I just wanted to point out for people that this is Article 10.04 for instruction during missed planning is what we're talking about here. But I also, for the story, because Talca asked about the implementation of Kelly services.
Hold on a second, Rob. The Article 10 point.
10.04.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, sorry.
So since Kelly Services arrived on or around March 1st, our fill rates for substitute teachers has gone up exponentially. And I'm real proud of folks that helped implement this program, and I'm gonna give you some of those statistics. So, which you don't have to write down, Mark, I have them here. Starting on March 1st, we had an 80.7 fill rate. The next day, we had 79.2, 82.1, 87%, 83.4, 79.8. March 11th to 14th, 84, 86, 88, 90, 92, 92.1, 91, 92.1. Monday, April 1st, 100%, there was no school that day. 88.5, 90.7, 89.1, 85.8 on Friday, April 5th. Monday, April 8th, 82.6, 86.1, 88.5, 89%, and 86.3. What that means is on those days, there was between 50 and on the worst day, 100 unfilled classrooms. I can tell you, when I was in HR, before we went to Kelly Services, we had fill rates in the 50s with 300 classes unfilled. So, and Mr. Calfee, who's also here, will tell you that the need for coverage supplements has dropped dramatically. So this issue, still an issue,
Right.
but has been helped dramatically by the addition of Kelly Services. And I know there's then another argument about the quality of those people and that kind of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about classes with adults in them.
Okay, thank you.
You can.
If you want to step out of the box, you
You
can.
gotta move like 3 feet one direction, there you go.
And grab the mic.
And grab the mic. Don't say anything detrimental.
No, I'm not. As an assistant principal who comes in every morning at 6:30 to cover my teachers, since we've had Kelly Services, my stress rate has gone down. Very, very rarely do I have to like search and separate my the classes. It's been so much better. I just have to say, because that's what I do. I come in, drive from Naples, get to school at 6:30 because of the substitute issue. But Kelly Services has helped me so much. I just had to say that.
All right, thanks, Mark. And Kevin?
And I have a question I'm sure you won't know the answer to, and not that it really matters as much other than just for me. I guess, are there still pockets? You know what I mean? Like, you say there were 50 classrooms that weren't covered. That kind of, to me, one day, that means like every other school had a vacancy, or are we seeing like, and again, you may not have the data, and really the data is just for me, I'm just interested if there's like a higher fill rate in one zone, and the east zone still lags behind statistically, or elementary or middle, and again, I don't know if you guys have that or have crunched that.
No, but our contract agent, Kelly Services, has that data, so we can certainly find that out. And actually, it's probably readily, we can get it quickly probably. So I'm curious too, Kevin.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to know, like, because traditionally we think like the west zone is the easiest zone to staff, so, no, okay, well, the west zone traditionally, and with a broad brush, is the easiest zone to staff, and the east is traditionally kind of the most difficult one. And so if Kelly Services is making a great impact in the east zone, that's a really great thing. But if all the vacancies are still in the east zone, it's just something for me. I just am interested in this kind of data point stuff. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so back to, Shay had her hand up first.
Oh, sorry, this has to do with what I was just saying. So I just want you to know that we have some days over 800 jobs for guest teachers. That's how high our vacancies are some days. So I just want that. 800, yes.
Is that a Monday or a Friday?
Actually, one week it was twice in the week, so it may have been a Monday and a Friday, yeah, but 800.
That's a lot. All right, Shay.
I just had a question. Do we know how many teachers at this time are still teaching like 7 out of 7, or I don't know what middle schools are, but approximately.
Kevin, he'd have to pull that information, so, yeah.
Okay. The language you were just talking about, anybody have it?
I do, but I can't do that. My computer's dead, so I can talk about it.
Can you, yes, please.
Should have charged it last night.
Yeah, there's no excuse for your Chromebook to be dead. We have tested. It worked today. I was in easy work.
Your own excuses, Henry.
It needs all those teams to be.
Go ahead, Kurt.
So the language Kevin's talking about is in the, it's under process in the, I guess it was called an MOU at the time. Yeah. And it better outlined the process. Much better than the voluntary assignment language that's currently in the contract. So I think one of the pieces that Kevin would like to bring into the contract is that piece. Volunteer coverage list is the bullet. It talks about supervisors maintaining a volunteer list, covering equitably, moving on. If somebody is available and refuses, they move on, but the administrator has the ability to assign. And the other piece that's, I just found it. It's right here, is an exception for special instructional, which simply says special instructional staff will not be required to provide classroom coverage. Since this language has gone away, we've heard some stories kind of back, like the stories we heard before this language was there. The most egregious one was little Johnny's in the school counselor's office crying. The bell rings and the principal says, no, you've got all duty. And I would think that a school counselor is better fit helping little Johnny than going and serving, bell duty. So that's one of the real big pieces for us is making special instructional staff immune from covering open classrooms. And we can get to a place where they also don't, maybe do some of those other duties as assigned as well.
Okay, Anna?
One thing I want to bring up about the elementary language with additional students, so we typically call this the candy bar method, where like how many ever kids you get, that's the total percentage of that teacher's class for the minutes that you have them in there. There are situations like, for example, I'm departmentalized, so when one teacher's out and we split that class, the kids that are assigned to my room maybe 3 of them are absent. So I have 2 out of the 5. But that's only for a short period of time, because then once I switch with my next partner teachers, I can have an additional 7 kids come into my room. But since those kids on that list were not, I'm only getting paid for 2 kids or 3 kids, when really I'm having an additional 7, 8, 9 kids throughout my classroom throughout the day. Where I'm providing extra materials, extra things for, instruction for. So I just kind of personally, I'm like, whatever, that's a lot of work on the principal's secretary to figure that out. But it is things, especially when I do stuff where I've spent money on things and now I'm like getting extra stuff for these kids, it does kind of play a role. And so that's something I think that's not considered in that language. And I know years ago, we've kind of had the intent of trying to get away from this candy bar method. So I just wanted to provide that piece of the story.
Okay. Christina?
I apologize because my voice will be shaky on this. I hate talking on the microphone. During COVID, I was very strongly opinionated that specialist teachers were also included in this specifically, because I know for a fact that I have friends in other buildings as well, probably 4 to 5 buildings right now that I know of that carve out the specialist teachers, and we do not get coverage pay. So in the case like Anna's talking about, I have a young lady who hasn't been able to go to PE for a couple of months. and she's in my room probably 12 extra times, 15 extra times already. I don't get paid extra for her. And this is just one child, and that's one class. I can typically get 3 to 5 kids extra every day that I do not get paid for. In addition to that, we have a teacher who is very ill and has to take time off, and we go and cover their classes, and we do not get paid that extra amount. So I would like to, somewhere in here, enshrine that specialist teachers get this coverage pay as well.
Okay. Rob, did you want to?
Yeah, so is she talking about non-classroom instruction?
The music teacher.
Okay,
Special.
all right, because she used specialist, and then,
She's elementary,
so we have special instructional that you don't want to provide coverage,
I don't want to be required.
but she teaches a special area, and she, fair enough, okay. I just want, the terminology, yeah, is important,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's different at different levels too, so. Kevin?
I think you had your hand up before me. Oh, okay. I just didn't want to jump in. But if that's going on, please let me know. We really try to work with the schools on those situations so that you are compensated for that, for the special
I think
coverage.
she's talking to Christine. He's talking to Christine. Okay, here's the mic.
Like I said, during the COVID stuff, and we had the MOU, and it specifically put the language in there for that, we got paid then. But once the MOU expired,
Right.
we are now out of it, and so there are quite a few places that don't allow specials, or encore is what we call it, or art, music, PE. We're carved back out again. So that's why I would like the language put back in there, so we have some teeth to it, and we can get paid for it without any problems. Thank you.
What you read, Kurt, does that have the language that Christine's talking about? No. And that was from the MOU. Okay. All right, Heather.
Okay, so part of the best language that we had with that MOU is also covering those vacancies. Just to give you a quick idea here, so for middle schools, I was just counting, there are 8 middle schools that have 1,000+ children. There are 5 that have 800+, and a lot of them only have 1 counselor, 2 if you're incredibly lucky. And it's exhausting, because if you've ever had a middle schooler, now multiplied by that number, and my job is to hear those things, and I like that for the most part. But when you're in charge of 900+, there should be some kind of compensation for that. That needs to be back on the table. So like if you have an advertised position, you should still be able to get that secondary one. We also need to implement that into our elementary. I pulled the data for elementary. We have 12 elementary schools with over 1,000 students. We have 15 with over 700. And elementary school counselors are not given the same kind of respect at all. Everybody thinks they're just Play-Doh. They have a lot of the same terribleness that the rest of us have. I'm talking coverage, I'm talking in general. Our district does not fund them appropriately. You only fund for 300 kids for 1 counselor.
I'm just asking if this is the coverage issue or is this compensation supplements? I'm looking at your leadership.
Yeah, I guess it's both, yeah.
I mean, I think
We're talking about coverage right
there's a
now.
compensation component to coverage.
I didn't know if, with all due respect, I didn't know if you were talking about covering classes.
No, when I'm talking about covering a vacant position,
In her world.
in my world.
Gotcha, okay.
A vacant counselor position. So if you have 2 counselors, it's only can have 2 counselors, and there's only 1. She's doing the job of both counselors.
Like, I'm blessed now, but that's a whole different story from before. There's lots of my colleagues that have this enormous amount of children and 0 help.
I got you, okay, thank you. Kevin, did you?
All right, Kevin?
It was more to respond, if you are aware of any circumstances where there wasn't compensation, could you please have them reach out so that we can fix that?
Yep.
I would like to piggyback on what Heather is saying as far as the number of availabilities and coverages. We went for almost an entire year where SLP was covering her position and the other position, and she was not compensated at all for that. So that needs to be addressed as well.
Okay. So you're saying it's not just school counselors? All right. And where are we going from here? Any more story? Rob?
Kerr, help me understand, and I don't have the old language in front of me, so under 4A, the current language, how does what you're talking about differ from that? Other than the administrator has the ability to assign?
It's more, I think of it.
I'm not talking about special instructional or anything. I'm talking
You're talking about the volunteer coverage.
Yeah.
It spells it out a little bit better, so that if an administrator or an employee reads the language, they know exactly what's supposed to happen. I know your computer is dead. I forwarded you the email with the MOU in there, but let me see if I can put both up so I can address your. The one that was amended and signed on, I can't read my writing. August 11th, 2022.
Yeah, I just absolutely want it.
Oh, that'd be phenomenal.
Great, thanks, Amy. She turns the Chromebook. She gets the gold star, right, Anna?
I charged it last night, yes I did.
Let's not go there. I've been in plenty of meetings with Amy where that computer is dying.
Always say what we have.
That's why she's being recognized today.
All right, language.
Every kid has a good day one day.
It's tough in this meeting tonight. So the status quo language, or the language that's in the contract right now, just says volunteers will be sought, a schedule will be followed, the principal maintains the list, and teachers get one may only receive additional compensation equal to 1 period a day. This one here really breaks it down. I like the simplicity of it, and I think anybody that reads it knows exactly what would be expected of them, or you know what, or if you're an administrator, what to do. I hope I answered your question. I can't remember. No, you did.
All right, any other discussion now that it's up there? Or questions? Rob?
I do think the circumstances on the ground are different. I mean, we were in a situation there where people may have been refusing to do coverage because they were trying to limit their exposure to COVID or being around children, and thankfully, as far as we know, that's no longer the case. So I think that language was written specifically for that at the time. And I understand what you're saying, Kerr. But I think the 5-sentence paragraph is, I know this sounds crazy from a lawyer, is much better than the 30-sentence clause, frankly.
Okay, anything else? Kerr?
Yeah, I don't disagree that this was written with during a particular time. It is also edited and, and ratified again. I'm shocked that you like the shorter version rather than the longer one.
But
Pass it to Shay, please. Okay, Shay.
So I understand what you're saying, Rob. I think that though, there are certain schools that are still struggling sometime with getting people to cover. And even though the Kelly Services numbers look good, there are certain schools that still ask for a lot of coverage, and I think having it explained out better would give the principal secretary really a little bit more to go on, because we do struggle still. There still are open positions even with Kelly, and I can give you an instance the other day where a fourth grade class had no coverage set up because nobody would volunteer, and those things happen. But an admin did cover it, which was nice.
Rob.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not like crazily in love with the current language. I just, there's also an administrative function here that comes in, which is the 3 refusals. So there's work attached to that by the principal secretary or whoever's keeping that tally. And then the ability to assign coverage if no volunteers exist. Yeah, I mean, that's actually a plus for administration. So I'm wondering if we could come up with something that's a combination of the 2.
That's why we're here, right? Let's work it out.
Work it out.
And again, I don't want to get away from the kind of the guardrail language either for the special instructional group. Like I think, and I think it is a lot of the other duties as assigned that also are like, I want psychologists to be psychologists and SLPs to be SLPs and school counselors to be school counselors. I almost messed it up. And so if we can reinstall that guardrail language outside of this, I think that goes a long way to remedying that problem.
Okay.
I just guess maybe to go down to that one.
It's on page 2. Bottom of page 2.
Rob?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
So just a question, Kurt or Kevin, you mentioned the exception. Are you interested in the B language also, I suppose?
I'm not sure if I'm interested in exactly that language, but I'm also interested in doing something for the special instructional group that covers for their peers, their peer group. There was something else there too. And maybe and again, Kelly Services may have completely like nuked, for lack of a better term, the need for this, but that administrative language where if like the teacher was doing all the administrative tasks, not like administrator, but you know, the lesson planning, the grading, the parent contact, that there was also some compensation for that, but again, Kelly Services may have eliminated the need for that. Oh, yeah, Kelly Services can grade, can't they? Oh, if Kelly Services can't grade, I'm sorry, I'm not absent. I don't have anybody for Kelly Services coming in for me. So maybe we do have to do it because I guess Kelly Services can't do some of the things that a certified teacher can do over a long-term basis. So.
All right, so do we need to go back to the drawing board, or does somebody have some options ready to go?
It won't work. Robert denied it right there.
Don't want the entire thing to be brought over as an
What,
option.
the entire MOU is an option?
Yeah, it's,
We're the shot.
yeah, no. I think we need some time to draft language, frankly. I mean, I understand
Okay.
what TALC's talking about. I think number 1 or 4A is certainly achievable. The special instructional is certainly achievable. So it's just a matter of having the appropriate language so that teams can determine whether or not they're supportive of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Kevin?
Yeah, and I think at this point, the idea, you know, if we're not gonna, and I don't think we talk about compensation with coverage right now, that's another date. But I think it's about like the idea of coverage and putting the guardrails back into place, bless you, and doing those things around the special instructional group, the administrative tasks, and kind of, you know, the voluntary coverage, just reestablishing those things. And so I think what we have now and what was in this MOU are two kind of different things, and I think we kind of meld them together to find the right middle ground that suits us now in a time where we're no longer in the COVID world, and we no longer need to address that.
Okay. Kevin?
One of the comments I received when I had to make heads or tails of this was that you're locking a school or a small school that potentially doesn't have enough staff to not be asked at any point to coverage a class. And that might be their only option. So they didn't want to do it, or they don't want to do it, but now if they have no other option, and then also for that, is it okay during their planning period if they want?
Kevin?
And I think all of that is good. I think, and people don't mind things. Again, this is something that I've really worked on. When a courtesy extended becomes an expectation that is required, people's attitude changed, right? So if you've got Kelly Services at 90%, and there's a school Kelly Services has covered every classroom for since the day they started, and there's no coverage there. The day you need somebody, people may have a different attitude than if you have been asking them every day, you know what I mean? So I think you're right, the facts on the ground have changed around this, and I think, you know, we're looking to embrace that. But are you asking about special instructional covering? Sorry.
So at one point, there was a high emphasis on a portion of ESE, a portion of special instructional, just for a part of the day where special instructional reached out and said, I can't cover at all, I'm hands off, and they were unhappy with that. They wanted to.
Okay, yeah, and that's where I think may not be required. We got the same call that we were costing them money essentially, and I think that's where we modified the language to say they can if they want to, but they could not be required. And I'm fine with that as well. Again, you know, I want the special instructional group being special instructional group and doing the things that they're trained to do that I can't, and the other classroom teachers generally can. But if they're able to, you know, it is what it is. But I also think we need to talk about the planning period for that group, because I know what I think we saw sometimes is like, if the special instructional employee had planning, let's say 10 to 10:30, right? But then they were asking them to cover on a day from 9 to 9:30. They were denying them pay from 9 to 9:30 because it wasn't the planning they had on the paper, which was 10 to 10:30, when in reality, special instructional may be able to plan kind of when they want to. The elementary planning time is driven by the specials schedule. The secondary planning period is driven by the master schedule and when, you know, people have that blank period. But with the special instructional group, there's a little more flexibility in their planning. And I also think when it said during your planning time, it was problematic when it was different plannings, different times of the day on different days, to figure out which one was the planning, and people were very strict about, well, this must be your planning, so we're not doing it here, we're not doing it there. But again, I honestly think the facts on the ground have changed with Kelly Services kind of getting involved and having more, you know, more classrooms covered. So, you know, I think we're in a good spot to kind of fix this language, and I would like to fix it so that it works forever, and we never have any more problems, and this is the last time we need to talk about it, because we're gonna be fully staffed.
Okay. Anybody else? And at this point, do you want to leave it that we'll come back with some clarifications? We've got the meat and potatoes discussed here, and come back.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, I saw nods over there too.
Okay.
All right, Kevin?
The quicker you can get to the next loss, the better.
A 76er fan, right? Okay, thanks.
I will be next week.
Don't wait till next week, they never make it to next week.
All right.
I need to order a shirt.
Then order a Celtic shirt. With that, we'll call it an evening. All right, thank you, everybody.